Okay, bring the meeting of the Committee on Fiscal Affairs to order. The first order of business is the approval of the minutes for our last meeting, June 4th, 2007. So moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
Questions, changes, comments? All in favor? Aye. Okay. We have two resolutions today before we get to the meat of the meeting, which will be going over the operating budget request for the fiscal year 08-09. Those two resolutions are, I'll read the first one. The resolution authorized General Counsel to execute a memorandum of understanding with the State University of New York System Administration for NYLink for 1-year term, which formalizes and extends the City University's ongoing relationship with NYLink to receive critical library services for the CUNY College libraries and the central office. The total amount of services for a 1-year term shall not exceed $1.3 million. Motion to Kate has approved it. Second?
Second.
Second. Okay. Any questions? Any comments? Anyone want to make a presentation? There being none, all in favor? Say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay. Second resolution, item C, is to authorize the General Counsel to execute a license agreement with the Springer Science Business Media LLC, known as Springer, for a 3-year term, which will allow libraries from the 11 senior colleges, 2 community colleges, and the central office to have electronic access to over 1,000 journals, books, and other academic materials that is made available by that company. The total amount of the agreement shall not exceed $982,000 for a 3-year term. So moved by Kat Vasily, seconded. Sharon, all in favor? Say aye. Opposed? None? Carries. And now, before we go into consideration of the university's operating budget proposal for the next fiscal year, Ernesto.
Thank you very much, and good evening, everyone. You have in your packets the resolution that was sent to you along with the budget request draft book in gray. Before you is a PowerPoint presentation which takes the essential guts out of this gray document and provides you some of the highlights, and that's the document that I will be reviewing, but feel free to ask any question about any document before you. And in the PowerPoint presentation, what I first want to do is sort of review the current state of the budget for the senior colleges and the community colleges and CUNY as a whole, and then take you through what our request is for 09. And so you can see on page 2, when the university begins the current fiscal year, which is 2008, in really, really good shape financially. We had the state of New York and the city of New York provide the full financing of all the mandatory cost increases at the university: collective bargaining, energy, fringe benefits, low TPS inflation. That was almost $100 million in and of itself. And on top of that, the colleges are engaging in an investment program on year 2 of the compact of approximately $60 million. So this is a very good year. On top of what was a very good year last year. Last year we were able to also hire a considerable number of full-time faculty and enhance student services. I'm reminded when I look at Karen Kaplowitz from John Jay, I was recently at a reception of the 54 new faculty members hired at John Jay. And that was last year, so they were already in the classroom. Tenure-track faculty. They were already in the classroom, and this $60 million is on top of all of those resources. So it's a very good 2 years. And the fall 2008 enrollment is on course to generate even more revenue. So not only did we start off with the $60 million investment, some of our campuses, not all of them, are having considerable enrollment growth. We have projected and budgeted in the 08 request enrollment growth of about 1.7%. System-wide at the senior colleges, initially we're up over 3% in enrollment. So there's, in addition to that, which we had budgeted, colleges are generating more revenue. And in particular, schools like Queens College, which is generating almost 8% increase in FTEs, and City College as well. We have additional revenue to support master plan priorities. And on page 3, you could see a little bit about what we're referring to in terms of this level of investment. The $30 million for the flagship environment, at the heart of that being the hiring of full-time faculty, supporting the key academic support function, which is libraries, adding $8.5 million for improvements of student services, including $2.5 million to increase advising and counseling services, and almost $1 million to enhance career counseling services. In addition, in recognition of the need to maintain our facilities, we're plowing in $7 million into the facilities infrastructure and maintenance, including almost $2 million that directed specifically for environmental health and safety concerns. On page 4, you see an illustration of those resources. It starts with the first column, 2007 base of approximately $1.5 billion. This is senior college funding by source. And you can see how we are now at $1.6 billion, an increase of almost $140 million at the senior colleges over the prior year. As you can see, that is entirely in the form of additional state support that was provided for the mandatory costs and for the investment program. At the community colleges, you'll also see on page 5 good growth from approximately $530 million to about $571 million, an increase of $41 million, or 7.7%. And there you can see the City of New York spending like the State of New York for the senior colleges, the City of New York for the community colleges, financing largely the mandatory cost increases that I alluded to earlier. That enabled, by the city's action, the additional $9.5 million in state support to be devoted to the programmatic increases, which is the way in which we requested, and so we appreciate it worked out exactly the way we wanted it. On page 6, you'll see the aggregate of both senior and community colleges. Our budget is now $2.2 billion. As you can see, the increase in percentage terms between the city and state is largely the same. You can also see, just as an illustration, the percent of tuition in terms of the overall budget of the state of CUNY is down to about 35%. That number used to hover at about 45% 3 or 4 years ago. So this infusion of city and state support is driving down that share. Okay, so that's where we are now. This is a good place. And it is in this good place that we seek to do the third year of the CUNY Compact. So going forward, we're going to seek city and state support of 100% of the mandatory cost increases like the past 2 years. This time we're asking for 30% of the costs to be supported by public dollars. Friends of the colleges, through an unprecedented focus on philanthropy. Philanthropy works. We have shown that it works, and we're going to continue pushing that agenda. The university, through its continuing drive through efficiencies and restructuring the budget, we continue to believe that in a $2.2 billion operation, there's always a way to reshape that budget and to put those resources to your new priorities. And finally, the students, through the continued enrollment growth. And in this particular budget request, we're seeking an increase in tuition of 5%, $100 per semester at the senior colleges, and $70 per semester at the community colleges. And it's 5% because what we have talked about in our rhetoric before about something that's not in greater than the HEPI index. This tries to straddle 2 fiscal years. Last year, we did not increase tuition, but neither did the state buy back the tuition proposal. So it's just, in effect, is trying to catch up for that, and in effect have increases of 2.5% per year. But this year we're going to schedule it at 5%. We got some one-time resources in the current year that's enabling us to finance a lot of the compact needs, but on a continuing basis we're going to need that revenue. So that's why it's 5%. The tuition increase, as you know, does not affect any of the many tens of thousands of students who are currently receiving funding on the tuition assistance program. We expect that to continue. The second dot point is a very important one on page 8, that no matter what the circumstances are, if there are students who even a $100 tuition increase per semester is problematic for them to continuing, the college presidents have been directed by the chancellor to make up the revenue losses through philanthropy and additional scholarship. So this is an important covenant that we have with the students, and that will continue. And the other piece, and which is what makes the compact in part very attractive, is that the students are engaged with the university administration at the colleges in helping shape the investment program, and that will continue along with the faculty of the university. On page 9, we go to the heart of the of the programmatic initiatives. And at the heart of that is the first stop point, that this budget request seeks to hire 500 new full-time faculty in '09. It's a large number, but we believe it's essential that we catch up. We estimate at the university that will take about 200 to 2,300 new full-time faculty for us to reach our goal of having 70% of instruction taught by full-time faculty. In order to get to that number, to 22,000 to 2,500, in order to get there, we need to be very aggressive of our faculty hiring. In this budget, we are. Of the 500 faculty, we're devoting 100 faculty specifically to the STEM disciplines in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. So that's a specific target of the 500 as part of the Decade of the Science Initiative. And so this budget request is clearly weighted in that direction. We continue and going to continue to seek resources for student support services, but in that case, it's going to be focused on just a number of areas: advising and counseling, particularly the counseling side on the psychological and mental health counseling that we know is sorely needed at this university, and a special effort in re-engineering financial aid, which in this environment of helping to meet college costs, we believe it's important to have very, very, very solid financial aid offices that are there and they're available to assist the students. And we're going to continue our efforts to support veterans who are returning to New York and need to find a home and services in this university. So those are the three key areas in student services that we are supporting. The other key area is the CUNY First. We are engaging in an overhaul of our administrative systems, and we need to upgrade those systems, and it's a very long-term project that I'm sure you've heard before, and it's largely on the capital side. We're seeking about $250 million on the capital side for the CUNY First program, but we clearly need to have operating dollars in support of that, and that's why that's part of the initiative. On page 9, I just remind everyone that we go through an extensive process this summer with the faculty. I personally, with the Budget Advisory Committee, the Faculty Senate, and the Chancellor and I at various forums with the student leadership to make sure that everyone we talk to throughout this university, student service personnel, provosts, and others, and we did that again this year. Just a point there on that this is not simply a top-down approach to the budgeting. We allow colleges flexibility in moving the dollars around. In some campuses, they wish to, depending on where they are with the faculty, put more dollars in student services. That's okay, and vice versa. In some other campuses, they already have, because of 2 straight years of compact funding, perhaps they're okay with their student services and they want to put more money in academic support. That is permitted under our approach here. So on page 11, you see some of the numbers. As you can see, how much it is weighted toward the flagship environment and the research environment. That is the hiring of the full-time faculty and supporting the Decade of the Science. The total programmatic initiatives for the senior colleges, we're looking at $79 million. For the community colleges, $25.4, for a total investment package of $104.4 million. The mandatory cost increases for '09 are considerable, like they were in '08. $61.3 million at the seniors, $21.7 at the communities, for a total mandatory need of $83 million. So the total ask, the total investment plan for '09 that we're contemplating is a little under $190 million, and the largest share of that going for the flagship environment, and the largest share of that going to full-time faculty. On page 12, you see how we distribute that cost between the various cost centers. 140.3 at the seniors, 47.1 at the communities. As you can see, the public support continues to be the lion's share, 61% of the overall budget. We are still asking the public, both the state and city, to support. Philanthropy would finance 8% of it. The efficiency is 4% of $7.5 million. Enrollment growth, we expect this enrollment growth to continue, although in this budget, despite the fact that for 3 years in a row now we have grown at a rate of 3 to 3.5%, this only anticipates a 1% increase in enrollment, so it's a fairly conservative number. And the tuition increase and additional child care funding on the way. The tuition increase represents $42.4 million,
I know.
or 22%, or a little under 23% of the overall investment package. On page 13, if you rather see the pies, you see that, again, the illustration there. In this case, the red and the blue represent the public support. Those two things combined represent 61%. And you'll see the tuition increase in green of 22%. And just to give you an example of why I believe, despite this tuition increases, you'll see the percent of the cost of CUNY decline in terms of tuition. Right now, it's about 35%. Remember that figure that I showed you earlier, that 35% of the cost of financing the system is borne by students. Well, this investment package going forward has pegged it at 23%. So if we continue doing this, that 35 will continue to go down with the significant investment that's coming in from other sources. So at the end of the day, on the senior college budget request by source on page 14, you see that we go up from our basis now, you'll recall, $1.6 billion. For the senior colleges, we're looking for an increase in state support of $82.7 million, or 8.2%. The tuition component, both the tuition increase and that associated with enrollment growth, generates $39.6 million at the senior colleges for a growth of 6.7%. For a total change that we're seeking an appropriation authority from the state of New York of $122.3 million, for 7.5%. The same percentages overall for the community colleges. On the state aid side, where it's $18.4 million to $191.3 million, or 10.7%. It's a little bit higher in terms of percentage terms because we're asking for an increase in base aid of $200 per FTE, and we're doing that to be consistent with our partners at State University of New York, who are seeking a similar amount. City support up 6.2%, in tuition. That's the combination of both the rate increase and the enrollment growth generates $11 million for 42.6. And then the final page, you see that $2.2 billion now going to $2.4 billion, of an increase of $164.9 million. Now you may be recalling that where's that 187 number? The 187 number that I told you is our total package, includes funds that we're not seeking appropriation authority because we already have it in the form of philanthropy and in the form of restructuring. So the only thing we're asking the state and the city to give us appropriation authority for is for $164.9 million. And finally, the last two charts, you'll see the history of tuition increases of the past, and beginning with the 5% in 2009, what we hope will be the tuition increases no greater than 3% in the out years. And this is what the compact promises, and if we can get the state of New York and the city of New York to fully embrace it, that is the only increases we'll see, and nothing like you see occurred between 1991 and 2004. On page 18, you have the comparable chart for the community colleges. That concludes my report.
Yes? No? Let's open it up for questions. Could you talk a little bit about the timing of the process at this point forward, so everybody understands the time frame?
Certainly, we will. After action by this committee, there will be a public hearing on the budget as part of the regular calendar for the trustees. At the end of this month, the trustees will meet and consider the requests. That gets officially transmitted to the mayor and the city council. As part of the budget-making process, however, the governor's budget division and the mayor's OMB office have seen drafts, because the way the budget process works, they're doing the budget as we speak. They're able to make modifications toward the end, but essentially they've been asking for our mandatory numbers. So what is our energy cost? What is our fringe benefit? So they can start scheduling those numbers. But they have not yet, seen formal action by the trustees. And we're a little bit different, CUNY and SUNY, in that unlike the Department of Motor Vehicles, we have a governing board that has processes and it meets and the like. So it's easy for them to do the budget for the motor vehicles department. It's a little bit more complicated for us. But the governor is scheduled to issue his executive budget, or the state's executive budget, on January 22nd.
What kind of, you've already said you've had conversations with the budget division and New York City OMB in the process. I guess the mayor put out a memo recently, or Mark Page may have put out the memo, talking about a 2.5% cut to agents. Was the City University included?
Yes, we were. The Office of Management and Budget last week issued a letter to all agency heads, including CUNY, that as a result of the budget pressures they're facing, they would like us to consider the impact of a $5.3 million reduction in the current year and an $8 million reduction in fiscal '09. This is part of their budget-making process. It is right now merely an exercise. The Office of Management and Budget is preparing scenarios for the mayor to consider. The mayor we have a due date of November 19th. We'll submit a proposal on what the impact will be, and then discussions will be had with the mayor's office, and he will update his plan in January, and whether or not the city council and the mayor will stick to that number sort of remains to be seen. But it's clear that the city of New York is feeling the pinch. They're getting ready to deal with the situation that they deal with, and the budget division is simply, giving the mayor all the options that he ought to have in front of him.
Nestor, do you want to talk a little about the strategy that we're following to minimize the impact
Sure.
on this 5.3% reduction so that the campuses are not held harmless, but minimizing the harm on it?
The 5.3 was the target to CUNY, and what we did was we looked at
That's
those
5.3 million,
the
right?
5.3 million.
5.3.
What we did was first look at those university-wide programs that are funded by the City of New York and the City Council to make sure that we are as aggressive with those programs that don't touch the core of the instructional budgets on the campuses in terms of levying reductions. So we were able to make reductions, proposed reductions to those programs, such that the only levy to the colleges was $2 million. So the colleges have been asked to provide reduction scenarios for $2 million, not 5.3, because we found other ways of chipping that number down from 5.3, because we recognize, one, that half the year is almost over. So $5.3 million is a lot of money, and then when half the year is done, and you've already hired, you're working on the margins at this point. So we wanted to make sure that the colleges were protected, and certainly their core instructional programs are protected. In addition, I failed to mention there was a hiring freeze that the city has ordered of all city agencies. We are setting up a process here in central administration of reviewing all hires before they get put on the payroll to make sure that we're not leveling and creating encumbrances that we can't sustain. The practical effect is that it is going to have some effect on the implementation of the Compact Investments Program in the current year. It won't affect the core instructional activities, because whatever they were going to do, they did it already in September, and those costs are built in. The colleges will have to find resources, largely on the non-instructional, non-student side of the house, OTPS reductions and the like, in order to get through the year, if it comes to pass that we have this reduction. Now, obviously, we all read the papers, we know what's going on. An indication of how far the City Council was prepared to go, the Speaker of the City Council response to the mayor's call for cuts was muted, and basically she said that he was doing the responsible thing. So I think the City Council is going to be a partner with the mayor in trying to trim down current year costs until it becomes a little bit clear how deep the reductions in the financial sector go in the City of New York, and they're just doing the prudent thing until such time as it gets a little bit clear on what the revenue picture looks like for '09.
So what areas in the community colleges would feel the greatest?
Frankly, at this point, the administrative side of the house, because the instructional side is set, and there's sufficient dollars in the system, as you can see from my initial report, that there's plenty of resources there. One, the enrollment is growing, continues to grow. The colleges they started off the year very good. It probably just means that they just have to slow down the investments, but the instructional investments have already been made, so they really can't slow that down. And the student service investments are largely made as well. What they can do is sort of play around with some of the, and they're all important. These things are still important.
Most of this be transparent to the student?
Yeah, I think entirely. It'll entirely be transparent, because you're looking at largely technology as business processes, And I like to think that our financial administrators are savvy enough to be able to manage through a $2 million cut in a budget, and it basically amounts to less than 1/4 of 1%. So it's not a big number. It's something that you got to manage. And
It's a $570 million pool to.
we expect them to manage it, and without it having any serious impact at all on the key functions that the colleges are performing.
About the budget request? Yes. Well, I'd like to say, I'm very pleased to say that I'm supporting this, and I'm supporting it on the direction of the University Faculty Senate Executive Committee, as well as my own support of it. There was a motion that was made by me and seconded by Professor Alfred Levine, who's here at the Executive Committee. It was overwhelmingly approved. We're very sensitive about the tuition issue, as you know, but the investment changes, the changes that have resulted from the investment at the college is just remarkable, and faculty from all the colleges speak about this, the difference it's made. As you said, at John Jay, it's been made a tremendous difference. I'm particularly sensitive to the tuition issue because I grew up very, very poor, and when I went to Queens College, I was desperately poor. But when I went to Queens College, we had all full-time faculty. We had a wonderful library. We had wonderful science labs. And this investment plan, this compact, is making that kind of difference to return us to that. And it's staggering, the numbers that you cite for the number of full-time faculty we'll need. And so I want to thank you for developing this proposal. Thank you, Ernesto, for consulting so thoroughly with the Budget Committee of the U.S.
I'd like to amplify on Karen's remarks. First of all, yes, thank you for the extraordinary degree of consultation and for the budget itself, which we see involves a net reduction in the percent that students are paying for the cost of this university, and that's a positive thing. I'd like to step backward in one sense to the action item 1C, if I may, which I didn't really have a chance to comment on, and that was the resolution to authorize the license agreement with Springer Science Business Media. This is really, really very important and very good. This university needs strong libraries. It needs electronic access to the literature. And academic issues, purely academic issues, don't often come by this particular committee, but this is one, and that's really critical to this university, and I'm glad that this was proposed and passed. So the only other thing that I can say is to be complimentary about the way this budget was handled and its implications for improved academics at this university.
From my own experience with budgets and given the experience that's happened here over the last 2 years, which has generally been very, very good. I think we're about, though, to embark on a different era in New York. We have the political relationships of the gentleman in Albany who don't see on one side, and got the potential downturn in the economy, the impact of the financial service, as well as the real estate industry and the property tax, transfer tax.
Very good.
We need, as we've seen in the last CUNY and CUNY budget process. So go up there and lobby up there and do all of that stuff. Cognizant of that. A lot of work, a lot of great work has been done to bring this university to a prominent position.
How will the
Sure.
I'm sorry.
Okay, please.
How will the Higher Ed Commission impact?
I was going to ask because I read an article in the New York Sun, which was
Exactly.
very optimistic.
Was it
The
very-
same day as an article next week talking about declining revenue.
I don't want to temper euphoria around the table, but I feel that we at least ought to put this on the record. We have, and I've used this metaphor again this morning with the Council of Presidents. I used it with the University Faculty Senate. I've used it in a number of venues. We're having two forces that are about to collide. One is, as Trustee Loda has said, the Commission on Higher Education is about to report with a very bold set of recommendations that are going to have a fairly high price tag associated with that, and I think that is good. This was the governor's idea, with some people whispering in his ear that this was a good thing to do, and I'm delighted that he did it, and there are a number of some distinguished people around the table, business people and public servants and university people from all sectors who are working hard to shape this proposal. But it's going to collide very, very soon with the realities, as what Trustee Loda has said. There has been a near meltdown in the fixed income space. And for those of you who read these things know what it is that I'm referring to. Part of the problem here is that there is an infiltration. I mean, a lot of these structured investment vehicles which were backed by very, very weak assets that people perhaps didn't fully appreciate, at least the risks associated with backing, the commercial paper and with respect to these investments. Many of them mortgages that were very flimsy. So there's been a very, very serious meltdown, and we see it at Merrill, we see it at Citigroup, and we're seeing it in some other financial houses. So it's not really clear at this point as to how deep this problem is and how it's going to temper this governor's view with respect to how to structure an executive budget. So it's going to be a very interesting time to see this collision of these two forces that are racing towards each other. And hopefully when there is this collision and we see the scatter from that collision, hopefully there will be sufficient dollars to put into the recommended executive budget that will lead to continuing investment, if not everything that we're looking for here in this proposal, enough to continue the momentum that we've started. And we also have very deep, and we'll talk about this in the next meeting, very deep needs on the capital side. This is an aged infrastructure that we have at CUNY, much older than the SUNY infrastructure. And so we're going to be asking for a very aggressive recommendation. We're going to propose an aggressive recommendation for the board to consider on the capital side. So how all of this is going to come together and flush out with the realities of this market is still a very open question, and we'll have to watch it carefully.
Questions? Comments? Before we close, I want to thank everybody for allowing the meeting to be moved half an hour early. We have the resolution, yes. Oh, okay. Help me. Where is it? Okay. All right. Consideration of the resolution for the fiscal year 2008-2009 operating university budget request. Can I ask a favor? Thank you. So moved. Second. Any further questions or comments? All those in favor? Say aye. Anyone opposed? Thank you. Okay. Is there any further business? Yes.
Will we be discussing investment portfolio?
Yeah, you have reports on the next
Oh, I'm sorry. Ernesto, before we, sorry.
It might be moot at this point.
It might. Well, I thought the chancellor gave the investment report quite on.
What you have on the table there is the report through September. And, actually it doesn't look so bad. That's because October is not in there yet. But, and I was assured by my controller that I can't get the October numbers yet. But anyway, the report is there. And as you can see, In the current month, we outperformed the S&P. For the year, for the last quarter, we outperformed it 2.2 to 0.2. And for the year, we're at 20.29 to the S&P's 14.5. And so we're not too disappointed with it, but we do, as you know, have a process. I have just a report that on the RFP, as you know, we sent out an RFP for consulting services, and we have back 10 firms, and I'll just read them out to you. Callan Associates, Cambridge Associates, LLC, the Common Fund, Fund Evaluation Group, Guggenheim, Hammond Associates, Mercer Investment Consulting, Merrill Lynch, New England Pension Consultants, Wilshire Consulting Group. Those are those we have now, and Barry Kaufman, the controller, has a number of people sifting through the numerous volumes to then make recommendations for the committee to decide who the next consultant will be. And they also have a search committee on the director of investments for the university, and they're down to about 5 or 6, and they'll be making a recommendation to me in the next month for a director of investments for CUNY to help us, along with the consultant that you select, reshape the university's investment policies going forward.
Question, we've dealt with Common Fund before, have we not?
Not as a consultant. They hold some of our cash in our short-term investments. That's what they do now for us.
Who's looking at the asset allocation on here?
Well, right now, New England is still our consultant, and they're working with our controller's office to keep an eye on until such time as we have a new consultant come in and make a set of recommendations.
When will consideration be made as to move out of the large cap value and the small cap value? I think they've run their course at this point.
Well, I think that, sooner rather than later, as soon as we get these consultants, they'll come in, and I don't anticipate it'll take more than a month or two, Barry, before we have someone that can come before the committee.
We expect to have somebody make a recommendation before the end of the year.
Good.
So, we're looking at our January meeting.
Otherwise, we're going to get hammered.
Going to get hammered.
And by the way, let me just say that even in the absence of a consultant, if there's any strong views on the committee that we need to take certain immediate action, I will clearly consult with the chair and others to take some action. So if you really believe strongly that we ought to do something now, please don't hesitate to send me a note and.
I'm not hesitating.
And make
I'm just
don't.
telling you.
All right, no. If you
It's
can do that in an email to me, that's great, and I'll consult with the chairman, and then we could perhaps just do it if it's really something that we need to consider right away. I was going to make that report on the city, but I already did that, so I don't have anything to say about the city. We already did that report. Okay.
Now?
Motion to adjourn?
I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I make such a motion.
Thank you. I'll second it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you next month. What did the market do today?
I know, I've been incognito.
I heard it was. Oh, is that?
But that's no reason to sell Citibank.
Oh, no.
I know.
Buy Merrill.
I know, but buy Citi as well. There's a trillion in assets. Got to wait a little more. We're bad, aren't we?